World Cup season kicked off in North America this week with a new crop of young up-and-comers on display despite a veteran taking the win. Horse Bytes is presented by Baule, the equestrian edit. Hey guys, your feedback has been amazing so far and actually helped us evolve into a whole new format for Horse Bytes, but we really need your support and to help build this community around the best our sport has to offer for the 5-star level. But make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and that will really help us bring you the best content out there. Welcome to Horse Bytes, your go-to source for keeping up with the show jumping world. We only saw one 5-star this week, and it was the first of 2 weeks back-to-back in Traverse City, Michigan, as the North American World Cup season kicked off. Alan Wade of Ireland built a nice welcoming course for the heavily American and relatively weaker field in the first qualifier of the season. Time allowed was snug enough, catching out almost half the class, which only saw 35 competitors, 7 of whom made it into the jump-off. We saw a lot of young horses excel, with 3 9-year-olds making it into the jump-off and a fair bit of young, inexperienced riders. Unlike the European World Cup leagues that are extremely competitive, the US World Cup League tends to be a lot weaker, demonstrated nicely by the fact that there were 22 Americans in the class, but only 3 of them made it into the top 10. Maybe this is because the overall pool of horses and riders in the US is a lot less experienced at the meter 60 level than their European counterparts. Firstly, let's quickly run through the World Cup rules so you actually know what we're talking about. The final will be in Basel, Switzerland in April. There are 13 regional leagues around the world with 90 qualifiers throughout the season. Riders only receive points if they place 1st through 12th. For the North American League, there are 8 qualifiers and only 4 of those count for qualifying. They take 7 athletes from the East Coast, 3 from the West Coast, 2 Canadians, and 2 Mexicans. Your region is where your citizenship is, not where you are domiciled. For athletes competing in any league, points count towards your country of citizenship's league, not where you live necessarily. Take Daniel Blumen, for example. He competes and lives in the US, but his points only count towards the European League, which Israel is a part of. And you can only obtain points once your home league begins. For example, Sweden's Antonia Petersen Hagstrom finished 6th this week, but won't acquire points since the Western European League hasn't even begun yet. And lastly, you have to acquire at least 1 point in your home league to qualify for the final. Okay, let's take a look at what went down this week. Kent Farrington led right from the start. He was the first to go clear, he was the first in the jump-off, and remained first on the leaderboard to pick up the lion's share of the $340,000 class. Kent managed to walk away with $200,000 for first place. There were 7 in the jump-off, and to be honest, our sport is typically very unpredictable, but this class was the exception. Essentially, everyone who you'd expect to be good was, and those who were less experienced faltered. Basically, only 3 riders who you'd expect to make it into the jump-off didn't, but we'll cover them in a second.
Setting the pace here and giving us our first look at the jump-off.
First off, Kent was great, particularly calculated, horse jumped beautifully, and he rode very measured rounds. If only a little conservative for his usual flair. They had to chase him in the jump-off, and only Sam Hutton was close to catching him, missing out by 0.2 of a second. He had a great run to the last, but his turn back to the vertical across the ring looked a tiny bit slower, possibly costing him the win.
Getting the same numbers.
Yeah.
It's quick.
Wow.
Just over it, but gave a great chase.
Wow.
There were 3 9-year-olds in the jump-off, so I think the riders were taking it a bit easy as this was the first meter 60 for most of them. Daniel Blumen's horse Corby VV perhaps jumped the best of the class, looking like an absolute superstar for the future. He is one hell of a flashy jumper, but has been getting better and better, and was recently sold to Abigail Wexner, one of our sport's most prolific owners, likely securing the ride for Blumen in the future.
Here she is, Elise Oken.
Elise Oken and her top mount Gelvira almost looked like she was going to catch Kent when she did 1 less down the penultimate line, but the 7 pitched her out too far on landing and caused a much wider track and ultimately slowed her time down as she finished in 3rd.
It's going to be just over.
Wow.
Team Abdel Saeed had a hell of a week, with Abdel himself winning the qualifier, but he picked up a time fault in the Grand Prix. However, his teammates Sam Hutton and Antonia Petersen Hagstrom both jumped clear to finish 2nd and 5th, respectively. It was Antonia's first meter 60 with cracked GLN, but the 9-year-old looked scopy and ready for this next level. She was a bit slow in the jump off, but a super solid round, picking up a nice chunk of change. Charlotte Jacobs' young mount Playboy also stepped up beautifully to this level, and after a 3-star win last week for Charlotte, she's clearly on a roll. Amazing what a win will do for confidence. And Shane Sweetnam gave it a good run, but was the only rider to have a fault in the jump-off. Taking a look at the less fortunate from the day, McLean Ward and Aaron Ballard both had heartbreak and obvious frustration at the last fence. Connor Swale picked up 2 down on the course, but with the best plank ride of the day, I'd say his riding skill was a notch above. You could really see the difference between how he rode and how much of the rest of the class handled some of the more delicate parts of Wade's course.
Not today for Kathleen Driscoll, but a very talented rider.
Kathleen Driscoll pulled up after having 2 down. Perhaps a personal call on this one, but I thought this wasn't the best judgment call. I'm usually a fan of pulling up when things look a little hairy or the horse is really struggling, but in this case, I thought she and the horse could have benefited from continuing. Maybe she felt something that we didn't see, but I just didn't think this was the right decision. Seemed like it came from a place of frustration, but not sure it warranted pulling up. Similarly, Jacqueline Steffens also retired, but it was Charlie Jacobs who perhaps had the roughest day of all when his horse refused to jump the triple bar and he elected to withdraw. All in, it was a solid class, albeit not the most exciting sport we've ever seen. The regulars performed as they should, and had you taken a look at the start list from the beginning, you probably would have guessed that the 2 Olympians on their Olympic horses would jump clear, and that the typical 20% would make it into the second round, as they did. The biggest issue with World Cup jumping in America isn't necessarily the weaker field of riders, but the fact that the World Cup finals has become less and less important on the calendar. It used to be our sport's premier yearly championship, the indoor test that everyone cared about, but it's now just another stop along the calendar. Many North American qualifiers are staged outside, unlike in Europe where they're almost all indoors. And frankly, each year, many of the top qualifiers elect not to even attend the finals because they no longer view the finals with the same prestige. In the end, a decent class, but at least we got to see some up-and-coming 9-year-old horses that look like proper future horses for the big sport. Well, that's a wrap on this week's Top Highlights, and stay tuned next week for another week out of Traverse City with the American Gold Cup and another round of the MLS. But before you go, check out our most athletic move from the week with Sarah Happy and Oscar A looking like acrobats over the penultimate fence in the World Cup.
Wow, that is absolute shame. Wow.
Stay tuned to all of our socials. Make sure to subscribe and follow along all the action as it unfolds here on Horse Bytes, your go-to source for keeping up with the show jumping world.